Hey everybody, this is Athletes and Antiquities, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the ideal time to buy a card. So this video is a little bit different because it's primarily focused on sports cards, but there is an element that can be drawn to collectibles like Pokemon and stuff. But in today's video, I want to talk about like when the optimal time is to buy a card in that athlete's career. And there is no like absolute right answer, because certain players may have a phenomenal start to their career, then be riddled with injury, or be a late bloomer, whatever it may be. So it's not a one-to-one thing, but in general, I'm gonna be talking about like the bell curve of price with most athletes that we've seen. And I'm primarily a football fan, so this is gonna be through a football lens. And just to cut to the chase, what I'm gonna be talking about today is buying athletes when you know they're good, you know they're going to end up in that sports like immortality, whether it's Hall of Fame or Pro Bowls or whatever. You know they're good enough to be on that pedestal, but they've been doing it for long enough that people tend to take them for granted. And this is I'm going to tie that idea into Pokemon as well at the end. But what I mean by that is, people that primarily collect sports cards, they collect two like eras in a player. They collect rookies because they like to speculate on how a player will do for their career. Oh, I want to buy this rookie quarterback. I think he's going to do really well. So I'm going to buy him now and then sell him for a profit. Or they just like to prospect and keep that card. So that's one major group of people. And another major group of people is those that buy Hall of Famers. I want to have every Hall of Fame quarterback, every Hall of Fame running back, every point guard, whatever it may be, every Celtic that went to the Hall of Fame, whatever it may be. A lot of people collect the greats because, in 10 years, you're not going to know who Joe Schmo was, but you're going to know who the Hall of Famers are, or people that are very involved are going to know who the Hall of Famers are. So what I do is I try and buy players when they're solidified and everyone knows they're good, but people kind of take their skill for granted. It's usually players that are in the middle of their career, towards the end of their career, or have just retired. And then I buy them, and I either keep them because it's a collectible and I collect it, or I sell it once they enter the Hall of Fame. Because usually when a player gets to the Hall of Fame, there is a noticeable price bump into all their major cards. So to show you, I'm going to give you a few names to kind of show you what I mean by this. And I'm not trying to hype up these players, hype up these cards. I just want to show you what I collect and how I collect, because it's, in my opinion, the most price efficient way to do it. So for example, one player that comes to mind is Larry Fitzgerald. If you follow the NFL, you know who he is. He's one of the greatest receivers of all time. And he had a phenomenal, very lengthy career, but he recently retired, and he didn't retire with a bang. He kind of petered out because he got old, he got less efficient, he got less, like his skills kind of waned, as every player does as they get old. So, but he didn't have a big retirement ceremony. He's one of the greatest receivers of all time, but he kind of just slowly disappeared. He went from being a starter on the Cardinals, he kind of bounced around a little bit, and he ended up exiting the league pretty quietly. And because of that, it was a great time for me to buy Larry Fitzgerald cards. And I should have thought ahead and put some up here, but he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. But nobody is talking about him right now because he's not making an impact on the field because he's retired, and he's not in the Hall of Fame yet. So he also hasn't signed any major contracts with like analysts, because if you're an analyst, it keeps your name fresh for much longer. Like Tony Romo is a good example, Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley. They're big sports analysts that are kind of keeping their name and their legacy alive because kids still know who they are. Oh, that's that guy on TV that always talks about the game or whatever. So he's in none of those categories. So because of that, he's very cheap right now, and it's for one of the best players ever. at his position. It seems like such a bargain, so I was sure to pick some up. I think it's a great time to do that. And again, I'm not trying to shill this, I'm just trying to say I try and buy a player at his cheapest point, and in my opinion, this is the cheapest point. Do I think it's going to balloon? It maybe, may not, maybe might not. I'm not saying to buy it, but for me, this is a good time to buy. But there are other players too, and I want to talk about Aaron Donald. So Aaron Donald is one of the most dominant defensive players in the league right now, like no question. He is multiple defensive player of the years. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league, and he's an inside lineman, and that makes that much more impressive, basically, because he picks up a lot of double teams. So it's much harder for him to produce those numbers. And he has an unreal amount of sacks, pressures, forced fumbles, etc. But he's been doing it for so long. He's been good for so long that people are starting to take him for granted. They're like, oh, that's Aaron Donald. He's just awesome. And, you know, he's been in the league for, what, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost 10 years. You know, let's say he stays in for a few more and then retires. Once he retires, people are going to be like, oh, wait a second. Like, that was one of the generational talents. That was one of the best defensive players in NFL history. I think he's top 5 easily for defensive players. But his stuff is cheap right now because he's not in the limelight. You know, he's still producing numbers, but he hasn't had an MVP season, or sorry, a Defensive Player of the Year season in a few years. Guys like TJ Watt have kind of taken that over recently. So he's getting a little bit less attention because of that. His cards are so cheap for how good he is. He's the next Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, these all-time greats. He is in that discussion, but his cards are so cheap because he's just not that guy right now. But once he retires, or if he wins another ring, if he gets another DPOY, if he's something like that, that puts him in that limelight, people will remember that, oh wait, I don't have a Aaron Donald card yet. Like, I have to get one. He's a lock for the Hall of Fame. So that's another player that I think it's like he's in that perfect point in his career where I can pick up cards of his very cheaply. And you know, that's what I've been doing. And another player that's gonna be a weird one, and you might think this is dumb, so let me know, but another player is Tom Brady. Like, he is, I mean, in my opinion, it's not even, that's stupid, he is the GOAT. It's not even just in my opinion, he is the GOAT. And when he was on the Patriots, he was white hot. He won 6 rings with them, and then he went to the Buccaneers and won a ring in his first year with a brand new team, which has like never been done before. He's solidified himself as the GOAT, but his last season was a little iffy. Then he kind of had a weird retirement where like he kind of retired, then he changed his mind, then he did it again, and he hasn't gotten in a commentator role yet. So this is like a very small window, because I think he's going to start commentating very soon, becoming an analyst, and then right after that he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. So I think this is a very small window where people aren't talking about Tom Brady, and for being the GOAT, his prices aren't that expensive. Like these Bowmans, these mid-grade Bowmans are pretty cheap. There's a lot of cards that are cheaper than you think they would be for the GOAT's rookie card. And because he was a 6th round pick, you know, there's not many of them out there. They weren't producing him as much as the 1st round picks. So it's a very specific point in time that I don't think will last very long, maybe a year tops, where Brady's not really being talked about in any capacity. No one's seeing him on TV. He's not playing. He's not in the Hall of Fame yet. He's kind of just existing right now. And then maybe next year he's going to become an analyst. He's going to be everywhere again. And then whatever, 2 years, 3 years down the line, he'll be in the Hall of Fame. So this is the perfect opportunity to buy that. And so players like that, I think this is like the opportunity to buy them if you plan on it. You know, I'm not trying to shill my items like, oh, I'm telling you to buy this, so do it right now. It's more just like, if you're looking for players, this tends to be the point where they're the cheapest. And if you're going to basketball, if you're a basketball fan, guys like Luka Doncic, oh, that's gonna fall. He is a phenomenal player who has not had playoff success yet. And I think if he does, his name is gonna shoot up the list of people's rankings of best players in the league right now. You know, if Dallas, or if he moves teams and he wins a ring with someone else, if he wins a ring in any capacity, it could be huge for him. But right now, people just see him as, oh, a really good player on a team that can't make it happen. But if that idea changes even a little bit, people might start to look at him again and be like, oh, you know, maybe I do need one of his cards. I don't have one yet. You know, this might be the time to do it. And you're ahead of the game there. So that's kind of like how I look at buying sports cards. With like vintage players, it doesn't matter. Like if you're trying to buy Peyton Manning, he's been out of the league for a while. He's already in the Hall of Fame. He's already an analyst. Like he's already done all that. So it's kind of just, if you want him, pick him up. You're not really going to be, his price won't be fluctuating very much. Same thing with a guy like Randy Moss down here or Calvin Johnson. They've already all made the Hall. They've already all gotten their jobs outside of being a player. So this mentality doesn't really apply to them. But I want to ask you guys: do you think it can apply to like Pokemon as well? Like, like this era was. People aren't really talking about it anymore. I'm not saying Gen 3 is in this discussion. Honestly, I think it's like Gen 5 right now, maybe Gen 6, are like, they're old. People aren't really talking about them right now. They're not really considered vintage yet. You know, no one's really nostalgic for them yet, but that might start to change soon. People might start to be nostalgic towards black and white. They might start to be nostalgic towards Gen 6 with like X and Y full arts and stuff. Do you foresee that happening? And do you think you can use the mentality that I use with athletes of like, oh, find them when they're like not nostalgic yet, they just got out of the league, they're past their prime? Is there an equivalent? Do you think black and white, X and Y, those kind of sets are in that zone where, you know, kids don't know what they are, adults aren't really buying them back yet, they're kind of in this weird limbo? Because I think there might be some opportunity there. I don't know with what specific cards, what specific sets. I'm not really acting on it, but it's interesting to watch. And if you have any thoughts on that, let me know. But that's all for today. Thanks. Bye.